Transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords, eternally retold.
If you're anything like me, then you've been waiting for Soul Calibur II for years. The good news is that it's finally here. It's also got some very, very big shoes to fill. It's the sequel to a 1999 game for the Dreamcast, which is quite arguably the single best game that the Dreamcast ever got, and it was one of the first games to actually come out for the system, at least in this country. Of course, it's a one-on-one 3D fighting game where you can play as a number of different weapon-wielding characters. Fighting games are kind of a dime a dozen, or at least they used to be, but what really set Soul Calibur apart was its amazingly good looks and also just how refined its gameplay was, how well balanced and how intricate and how fast all the action was. It just was really a fun game to play and had a lot of real depth to it. You could just get better and better at it, try out any of its over a dozen characters and have a lot of success with them and so forth. Soul Calibur is easily one of the best fighting games to date, so the idea of a sequel is certainly exciting. A home version of Soul Calibur II probably won't hit until sometime next year. It'll likely hit for all major console platforms, but for now you could go ahead and play it in the arcades. It's running on hardware that is basically identical to the PlayStation 2, so when you see the game in arcades now, you're getting a very good preview of what's to come in the eventual PlayStation 2 version. You'll be quick to notice that Soul Calibur 2, if you've ever played the first one, is a lot like the first one. It's got a lot of the same characters. A couple of the new characters in the game are actually just thinly veiled replacements for some of the characters from the original game. And it basically plays the same way. You've still got your best 2 out of 3 rounds, kind of killer be killed match. There's still no real blood, even though these characters are fighting with bladed weapons for the most part. You could still beat opponents either by knocking them out or by knocking them out of the ring, literally, off the side of a cliff or something like that. So the first thing you'll notice is that Soul Calibur 2 is not a completely revolutionary, completely unusual game. It certainly doesn't fall far from the tree in terms of what you'd expect from a fighting game sequel. Off the bat, there are 4 entirely new characters, or seemingly entirely new characters in Soul Calibur 2. These include Raphael, a French fencer, who has a lot of really cool-looking fencing moves, lots of parries and thrusts and stuff like that, and he also has a lot of vicious snap kicks. There's also Talim, who's this young girl apparently from Southeast Asia or India or somewhere like that. She fights with these like elbow knives, lending her to a lot of really close-ranged and fast attacks, but she really has to get in close in order to do any damage. She kind of has this belly dancer look about her and doesn't really look as powerful as some of the other characters, but I'm sure we'll find that she can fend for herself. There's Cassandra, who's a replacement for Soul Calibur's Sophitia. She basically looks almost exactly the same and fights with a sword and shield like her older sister and has a lot of the same moves. And then there's Hong, who's basically a replacement for Hwang from Soul Calibur, who like that character, is a Korean swordsman who fights with a large broadsword and has a lot of really nimble attacks. A lot of the popular favorites from Soul Calibur also return, like Mitsurugi and Taki and Nightmare and Maxi. These characters all have new techniques and new outfits and really look outstanding, have some pretty interesting new outfits. The game's got a lot of frilly colors going on to go with the period. Soul Calibur 2 certainly does look better than the original, although not by leaps and bounds. All the characters look different. They've got at least one entirely new outfit, though only a total of 2 are available, at least thus far. The backgrounds are a lot more detailed than in Soul Calibur, and still you'll notice that the characters are very nicely articulated. All their fingers and their facial expressions and so forth are all fully realized, and all the metal weapons have a really nice metallic sheen to them. They really look like they're made of steel.
Now, 2 souls are fiercely entangled.
Give up already.
Don't worry, Talum. Believe in yourself.
Battle 1. Fight!
One thing you'll notice about Soul Calibur II is that all the voices have been dubbed in English. In the previous game, only some of the voices were in English, mostly for the Western characters. The Eastern characters all spoke Japanese, but now they all speak English, and some of them really don't sound that great. Like Mitsurugi, the samurai, speaks with kind of a broken Japanese accent, which, you know, seems like it should be fitting, but you'd probably rather hear him speaking his native tongue. Of course, Soul Calibur II is really about the gameplay, and it plays a lot like the previous game. It's also just very, very fast, a lot of really quick exchanges, so a defensive opponent really isn't going to last long, you know, trying to deflect a barrage of high and low attacks from the opponent. The big thing that the designers tried to do to the gameplay is actually quite subtle. It's that they're trying to play up the relationship between horizontal slashes and vertical slashes. Soul Calibur II also uses 4 buttons like the first game, a guard button, a kick button, and vertical and horizontal slash. The way it works is a vertical slash tends to have priority over a horizontal slash. On the other hand, you can easily sidestep to avoid a vertical slash. So to complete the rock, paper, scissors relationship, a horizontal slash can beat a lateral movement. So you have this kind of three-pronged relationship between these different kinds of attacks, and along with that you have a separate rock, paper, scissors relationship going with high, middle, and low attacks, which you need to block accordingly. So in reality, it's all quite complex. Knowing where to attack, predicting your opponent, you know, knowing all your character's different moves. Certainly it seems like there's a lot of depth there, and every character does have a number of new moves, basically to accentuate this sort of gameplay style. Surprisingly, the arcade game has a number of different modes to it besides just the straight arcade mode versus the computer or the versus mode against other players. There's also a 5-minute practice mode where you can practice your own moves kind of against an AI dummy. And there's also what's called a conquest mode, which we didn't see ourselves, but we know is going to be in there, and it's apparently based on the mission-based extra mode in Soul Calibur, where you might have to defeat an opponent using only throws or defeat an opponent by ringing him out as opposed to just defeating him with physical attacks. So that should be interesting, but the core game itself, you know, it's certainly a fighting game. Don't expect it to floor you or anything like that. And, you know, is it going to single-handedly save the fighting game genre? Who knows? Arguably, it's Soul Calibur that caused the fighting game genre to have a lot of problems to begin with, because it was this superlative fighting game that made everyone else say, well, I'm not even going to bother to try to compete with that. And, you know, it's people are still playing Soul Calibur to this day, so it'll be interesting to see if the sequel can have nearly that same level of longevity. I don't think anyone would deny that fighting games just aren't as popular as they used to be. But with that said, the release of Soul Calibur II is certainly a major event for fighting gamers everywhere. And it'll be interesting to see if this is something that can drive people to pick up and go to their local arcade, whereas, you know, normally they'd be content to sit at home and play their PlayStation 2. We've got a while to wait before a home version of this game is going to hit. Namco's got Tekken 4 coming out for the PlayStation 2, and you'd better believe that it's going to spread out the release of that game with a game like Soul Calibur 2 by a matter of months. But for the time being, if you want to see it for yourself, give your local kind of mini golf center or last decent remaining arcade a call and see if they got it in. And if they haven't, tell them that they should, because it's worth checking out.
Transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords, eternally retold.